weathergolf.com. That's CVB's homepage. You can click right there and see the live cam. And I don't know if you've seen it, but sometimes the weather people on WRAL have that in the background and talk about what a great place this is. The last thing they're doing is they're producing something called Explore More, and they've got this young, hip couple that's going to go around Moore County and feature neat things to do. And one of the things they're doing is featuring the Tufts Archives and the walking tour. So they've been filming those, and they hope to debut those on their social media sites in January. So that's all I've got, John. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lydia. Kevin? Okay. Judy?
I have no report today, except I have been talking to families in my neighborhood about what people are doing for Halloween. And there are a lot of question marks. And most people are thinking about playing it pretty low-key. And I think I'm going to deliver my goodies to the families near me that have children, and turn my light off. Good luck.
Well, you live in a very active neighborhood, so
Yes.
distribute early and put your light off early, otherwise.
Yeah,
they can-
I'll go early afternoon before they get out. Yeah. Thanks.
Jane?
Pinehurst Business Partners was able to hold its Holly Arts Fair on October 17th, and everyone seems to have had a good time, and that was great, and took a lot of work on the part of Pinehurst Business Partners and also Mark Wagner from our own Parks and Rec Department, so I want to thank everybody for having that happen.
Thank you for that report. It was very well done, I think.
That was
And,
impressive.
Right, the right size for this time, I think, Kevin, is what we all observed there. All right, moving on to item number 3 in our agenda. It's a motion to approve the consent agenda. These are reports that have been earlier reviewed and will be approved as one motion. I will ask, however, if there's any council member that wants to have a discussion or pull out any particular part of the safety reports and the minutes of the council meetings. Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda, please?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Kevin Drum. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lydia Bosch. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Move on to item number 4. Discuss and consider a resolution appointing a member of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. Jeff Sanborn.
I think I'd just like to ask Mark and Tom and Melody maybe to come, maybe we need another chair. Let me help out with that. I'll stand here, Jeff. Okay.
Grab some Halloween candy while you're there, and the public can grab as much as they want.
Andy, I would have gone there, so.
Maybe not, maybe it's not true.
Mark?
Appreciate the intro. Basically, we're here to fill the seat that was vacated when Mike Ventola stepped down from the BPAC committee earlier this year. And fortunately, Melody put in an application for that. She is a 26-year Air Force veteran. We appreciate her service for that, and we are happy that she is volunteering to serve some more for the village, hopefully. She is a avid walker. Her husband is an avid cyclist, so we think she would be a good addition to the committee, but we'll open it up to council if you have any questions for Melody, or let you proceed from there.
Thank you very much, Mark. I don't have a question, it's a comment, and that is, so watch out. Some people sitting up here have served on that committee over time, so you never know where things will lead into the future, but we're delighted that you would have been in touch with Tom and Mark and have the skills that you're bringing to this, and 2 family members who evidently are quite good users of bikes and peds, and so we welcome your attention to that. Any council members have a question?
Extremely important committee, and we haven't done a lot in the past couple of years, and we hope to do a lot in the next couple of years, so your timing's perfect.
Make sure you have your mic there, Kevin.
We haven't done a lot in the previous 2 years, but we expect to do a lot in the next couple of years, so your timing is perfect.
Any other comments from council? Tom?
Yes, I would just like to comment that we lost one of our primary people that she's replacing, who was a bicyclist. So she's come at the right time for us, and I think she'll be a welcome addition.
Yeah, you're talking about Mike Ventola, who served on
Yes,
this committee
correct.
almost since its start, and was surely an active advocate for
Yeah.
bicycle and bicycle lanes and these sorts of things.
He really was.
Yeah. I mentioned just before the meeting started that you might have some questions of us, so if you do, this would be the time.
I don't believe I have any questions as of yet, but I do want to thank you guys for your time and consideration.
Good, good, good. We'll need a resolution to approve this appointment. Do I have such?
I move to approve Resolution 20-31, appointing Melody Jensen to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
Motion by Lydia Bosch. Is there a second?
I second it.
Second by Jane Hogaman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Melody, Mark, Tom, thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we'll move on to item number 5, discuss and consider requested further action on preliminary plat for the Floyd Way major subdivision. Jeff?
Thank you, John. Just to introduce why we're talking about the Floyd Way subdivision again. The applicant requested that the council reconsider one of the conditions that was that the council put in place when you approved the preliminary plat, and that was the condition associated with the site triangle. The council could remove the condition, but you cannot remove the requirement, the ultimate requirement to comply with that specification in our engineering standards manual. Meanwhile, there is some language in our PDO that suggests or might lead one to conclude that the applicant may not pursue a variance from the Board of Adjustments for that condition or any of the other 2 conditions. And we are recommending that in order to clarify that situation, given the fact that the general statutes obligate us to allow that remedy for an applicant to pursue a variance if they meet the standards associated with a hardship variance or other remedies that might be pursued through a Board of Adjustments for any type of administrative finding. We're recommending that you adopt a 4th condition that clarifies that the applicant may pursue a variance or other Board of Adjustment remedies for that administrative finding. And so I'll turn that over to Darren.
Thank you, Jeff. Darren?
There's not much left to turn over to Darren. Jeff did a good job, and really what we're talking about tonight is the site triangle requirement, which is a hard requirement in our PDO and ESSM. It's an administrative requirement. The review that council performs as part of its plat review authority is done as an administrative review. We don't handle that as a quasi-judicial process as other places do. If a plat request comes in and we review it and it meets the administrative requirements of our PDO and ESSM, we're required to approve that. As part of the review and approval of this particular plat, the site triangle easements were something that were noted. It was noted and discussed during the planning and zoning portion, public hearing, and then it was noted again at the council. At the council, the plat that came up for review did not have the requisite and required site triangle easements on it. Thus, that administrative requirement was placed as a condition. It's not really even a condition. It's not a subjective condition. It's actually a requirement of the code that it be there. If the applicant came through, did not have the site triangles on a preliminary plat, on a final plat, we would simply reject it. And as we see it, the appropriate avenue for review for potential appeal of our decision or interpretation or of the actual language of the standard itself is through a quasi-judicial process through the Board of Adjustment. There's some discussion, and as the client's attorney pointed out, there's some language in their PDO that says that you can't do that for a condition. But this is an administrative requirement Our interpretation is it's an administrative requirement. It can go before the Board of Adjustment. I think the enabling statute for allowing zoning, you have to have the ability to vary the zoning. It's done through the Board of Adjustment, or it can be done through the legislative body. We do things through the Board of Adjustment. So what we're doing is proposing to come back, as Jeff had stated, to add an additional condition to make it clear that the applicant may seek a variance or other relief of any of the conditions imposed through the Village of Pinehurst Board of Adjustment per the North Carolina General Statute. So that is again, the applicant, the client, has requested to remove that site triangle condition. We're not recommending that you actually do that. We're recommending that you add this condition to allow them to move forward to the body which we think is most appropriate to review under a quasi-judicial evidentiary review process, to hear that appeal and look at the hardship and make a ruling based on the facts and evidence that are presented. So that's what we're requesting at this point.
So Darren and Jeff, what the council is being asked to do is not to change any of the conditions we already have made. Those stand. We're being asked to clarify by additional condition the review process that the applicant can follow if they so choose.
Correct. Basically, we're saying that you may go to the Board of Adjustment for them to look at it, review, and make a ruling on the site triangle issue. If the facts, the hardship standards, if they're met, the requisite finding should be in their favor, but they have to present that. They have to present that evidence.
Okay. Other questions from council members for Darren or Jeff Sanborn?
Or to clarification.
Anything, Lydia? Did you have a question?
You know, the goal here is we want a safe intersection. I mean, that is the concern from residents, from us. If we did the ESSM and our PDO, we would get that. But the applicant is saying, what we're telling the applicant, you may apply for a variance, but the variance still, that we still have to satisfy somebody, the Board of Adjustment, that intersection will be safe. The safety will not be compromised at that intersection, correct?
Correct. And that's why that's why it's incumbent, we think, on the applicant making the request that they provide the requisite traffic analysis, that there's not going to be a hazard created by the location of a street there. So that's all we're requesting at this point to be submitted.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, we're not compromising safety. Safety in that intersection is still first and foremost in our, okay, thanks.
That necessarily will be an element that will have to be proven to the Board of Adjustments.
Thank you.
Judy?
And we're just simply clarifying an appeal path.
Right.
Not in any way changing
Yeah.
what we said earlier. Or-
Jane, any question?
No.
I have a motion which I will read and seek a second for this particular item. I move to amend the original conditions, A, B, and C, set forth in the approval of the Floyd Way Major Subdivision Preliminary Plat, identified as Moore County Parcel ID 00052-077 on September 22nd, 2020, to include Condition D as the council's response to the applicant's request that the council waive the site triangle requirement in Condition C. Condition D will read as follows. The applicant may seek a variance or other relief on any of the conditions imposed through the Village of Pinehurst Board of Adjustment per North Carolina General Statutes.
Second that.
I made the motion, and second by Kevin Drum. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's passed unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll move on then to item number 6, presentation of the fiscal year 2020 State of the Village Report. Jeff, always a highlight of our council years. I think Lauren is here to present this.
She is, thank you, John. And we call it the State of the Village Report, and really what this is all about is telling the council and the public how we did last year.
All right, thank you, council, for having me here today. I appreciate it. And I did just pass out this year's State of the Village report. And I appreciate Melissa Holt's help on getting this all formatted in a beautiful professional format that we have now. We revamped it last year and we're proud to call it ours. This report is available on the village's website for the public to view in complete detail. It's a beautiful report that's about 22 pages long, so I know we can only do an abbreviated version of the results today, but really what I'm doing is throughout this PowerPoint presentation today is highlighting the main points that we want to communicate for the results for FY 2020. Again, our fiscal year, you all know this, but just for the public's sake as well, starts July 1 and ends on June 30th. And so this is reporting out the year that ended on June 30th of 2020. As we go through it, council, it may be helpful to keep your State of the Village report in front of you. If you turn to page 21, page 21 is the corporate balance scorecard. And that is what the results on each of the slides that I'll go over, it's taking those corporate card KPIs and reporting on our performance for those and expanding on it a little bit more to give you a little more context as to how we performed. Okay? Get us started. All right. So first off, as usual, I like to stop and thank the council for your guidance, for your leadership and your strategic direction as we focus on achieving our goals and objectives in order to deliver quality services to our residents, businesses, and visitors here at the Village of Pinehurst. So thank you, council, for your guidance on this. And here you'll find a message from our village manager. This is a message from all of our managers. And as you know, all of our departments roll up underneath the leadership of one of our 3 managers. Overall, we have accomplished the goals and objectives that you set for us in fiscal year 2020. This year, 99% of residents and 100% of businesses rated the overall quality of life in the village as good or excellent. As in the past, it's worth mentioning that we group our neutral responses into our satisfaction in order so we can focus really on the dissatisfaction levels to identify areas for improvement. This year, we focused efforts on 8 different initiative action plans, and our residents and businesses continue to indicate high satisfaction levels with the vast majority of village services. Since adopting the Baldrige framework, the village has seen improved resident satisfaction in 85% of our service areas, and we currently exceed the national averages in 49 out of 52 service areas, which is exceptional. The results of this presentation that you'll see are color-coded with red, yellow, and green indicators to more readily identify our 2020 performance relative to the goals that we have established for each of the key performance indicators. Next, you'll see on the screen the resident and business ratings for the quality of life. So here you'll see the left graph here is the resident ratings, and then the one on the right is for businesses. But overall, we have our residents and businesses rating our quality of life very, very high year over year. This is very consistent with how we've seen performance indicated over the last several years. On the next 2 slides, you'll see we've had to split it up this year over 2 different slides. Since 2012, the village achieved the highest annual satisfaction rating among our benchmark group with ETC, our survey company, for 18 different service areas. In this last year alone, we set the high mark in 12, which is the most we've ever set in 1 year. These satisfaction ratings were achieved without a neutral rating included. So we set the high mark in fiscal year 2020, specifically in residential trash collection services at 95%, overall image of the village at 96%, the village as a place to retire at 96%, Yard waste collection services at 91%. Effectiveness of village manager and appointed staff, 76%. Landscaping and medians in other public areas, 93%. Fire services, 96%. Overall feeling of safety, 97%. Enforcing sign regulations, 66%. Maintenance and preservation of downtown, 91%. Opportunities to participate in local government, 65%. And quality of leadership provided by elected officials at 75%. This chart here, it's incredible to me that we have, let's see, 6 of these service areas that we've never set the high mark before, we set this year out of the 12. So 50% of those we set in the high mark this fiscal year. Now, what this doesn't show, Council, I know, Judy, you had the question specifically about where do we fall in the other years. This chart only shows the times that we set that high mark. So we were kind of the high mark setter in all of these years that you see results indicated here. Does that make sense?
And how large is that benchmark group? How many municipalities or towns?
I know where it is in the survey, and I did not bring it with me. I should have brought it with me. I can get that information to you.
All right.
I can't remember off the top of my head. They have us grouped, I want to say it's around 20 or so other municipalities.
Same size?
Under 50,000 population, I believe is the threshold for that. I'll get that. It's not. It's those who use ETC as a survey administrator as well to administer their survey. So they really try to fit us specifically with other municipalities under a population threshold. That's how they do that, the grouping for that. Sure. So that's a
Kevin,
Kevin, you're
Good question.
breaking up here. If you, yeah.
I think you might be muted.
Your mic is off, Kevin.
This one doesn't have a neutral
Right.
setting like the other ones.
Right.
Makes it more impressive. in
So
my book.
it does. So we actually rated, because of how we include our neutrals, you'll see in other results on our scorecards or other things, we'll note that our results are higher because we include neutrals into our performance measures. But these high marks were set without neutrals
That's incredible.
included. So it's interesting to see, some organizations include neutrals, some don't, so they try to keep it on the same playing field, I guess, and just do these high marks based on purely satisfaction, not including neutrals. All right. Oh, it is. I'm sorry. I even had a note here. It is for a population of 50,000 or less, that benchmark group. Okay, moving on. You'll see the dial here, if I can get the mouse to go. Oh, it jumped on me. There we go. The dial here is what we use, our methodology to describe how we're measuring our performance. This dial receives a score of, every KPI, I should say, receives a score of 1 to 10 based on actual results relative to the annual goal and the red flag thresholds. All of our individual KPI scores are then grouped by council goal and balanced scorecard perspective to form a composite score for the entire organization. Between the red flag and the goal, we consider to be acceptable performance. You'll see it indicated as a yellow color. Anything over a 6.66 means that we exceeded our goal. And then anything that falls below the 3.33 red flag threshold are causes for concern that we may want to keep our eye on. All of the KPIs on the balanced scorecard roll up again to a total composite score. And in fiscal year 2020, the village scored an 8.63 score, exceeding our goal for the year. On the next page, you'll see the fiscal year 2020 balanced scorecard. As you're well aware, we like to organize a lot of our results by balanced scorecard goals, and that's how we have done that going forward in this presentation. I'll also note that I've included a green arrow for noticeable improvement in performance for the fiscal year, and then a red arrow is any decline in performance for the fiscal year as well. I've ensured that that is taking into account something greater or less than, or I should say greater than the margin of error for the survey. Okay, so moving forward. There we go. Into our, nope, jumped again on me. Sorry, y'all. This mouse is jumping. Okay, moving on to the customer perspective. The first balanced scorecard goal is to safeguard the community. This year, the village achieved very high satisfaction ratings with safeguarding the community. And you'll see here, the first 3 ratings here are all about fire services. So the first is our satisfaction with fire services, 100% satisfied in 2020. When you're looking at this chart, you're going to want to look at the third column in green on the right. And then the last column is how we performed relative to the goal that we set. The goal is in the last column. Resident satisfaction with how quickly our fire personnel respond to emergencies is very, very high, 99%. And we had a much better fire incident rate this year than in years past. So we dropped from a fire incident rate per 1,000 population served, which was 0.26 last year, to a 0.05 this year. So outstanding results there, preventing fires in the village. We have our residents who feel safe in the village at 100%, and then percent of residents who are satisfied with police services, 98%. And overall, our crime rate improved this year greatly over last year. Our police department continued working through their CALIA accreditation process this year. That was an initiative action plan that we had on the list to keep working through, updating their policies and procedures to meet their required standards. And then, of course, our fire department continues to focus their efforts on response and reaction times. And in 2020, the department achieved a reaction time of less than 90 seconds or less, 85% of the time. So great results there that they continue to improve. Okay, moving on to the next goal here is to promote high quality development and appearance. Overall, again, high satisfaction ratings here for the overall appearance of the village at 99% satisfied. Also, residents satisfied with the enforcement of codes and ordinances, 86% satisfaction, which exceeds our 85% goal that we set for that KPI. Resident satisfaction with the quality of new development actually saw a jump this year. It went from 77% to 83%, which is an interesting change there. And then the percent of residents satisfied with our efforts to maintain quality of neighborhoods at 90% satisfied. So another increase there of satisfaction with our residents. Overall, the Planning and Inspections Department finished their initiative action plan to develop the long-range comp plan. That was on their list this year. And they released the RFQ, and they interviewed consultants to develop a small area plan for the Village Place Rattlesnake Trail corridor, also then coupled in with the Highway 5 commercial area as well. This year specifically, we wanted to call out the Planning and Inspections Department has been very busy issuing 189 new single-family residential permits, and they investigated over 1,300 code enforcement violations. 98% of them, which were actually resolved within the 45-day time frame. Our inspectors also completed 7,642 building inspections, which was an increase over last year as well, and 100% of those are completed in 1 business day. So wonderful turnaround time with our planning and inspections departments, but continuing to stay very busy with their workload, making sure we're issuing all of those permits in a timely manner as well. Moving on to the next goal, to promote a thriving business community. We have 1 KPI here on our corporate card, which is the businesses likely to recommend the village as a business location. And this year, those businesses were 91% likely to recommend. So good results there from our businesses. Overall, if you think about non-residential development this year, we were strong again with 35 non-residential permits that were issued. So very an increase in our non-residential permits that were issued this year over last year. Our businesses also indicated overall quality of services at 97% satisfaction. They also, 97% of them indicated satisfaction with customer service provided by village employees compared to other places that they have operated a business in the past. So excellent results there with the services that we're providing them. And then lastly, at 93%, the businesses were satisfied with the overall image of the village. Of course, we also, in this goal, have our Welcome Center that rolls up to promoting a thriving business community. And our Welcome Center hosted Small Business Saturday and encouraged local shopping and dining in November. And it drew over 360 visitors that stepped foot into the Welcome Center for that event. And they tracked receipts for that event that totaled over $25,000 spent in the village. So excellent results there. I know Jill at the Welcome Center works hard to make that a successful event, and our business owners were outstanding by contributing over $3,800 of prizes for 3 different gift baskets. So wonderful event there that they host every year in the Welcome Center. Okay, the next goal is to promote transportation, mobility, and connectivity. And this year, we did not have any specific projects that we added for walkway additions or street lighting this year. So we knew we were kind of holding the line with our goals for what we're aiming for satisfaction here. You'll see 71% of residents were satisfied with the availability of walkways. 94%, which always consistently remains high, are residents satisfied with the availability of greenway and walking trails. You'll see satisfaction with the adequacy of street lighting dropped a little bit this year to 70%. Looks like we're back closer to where we were in 2018 with that result. And then our residents satisfied with street and right-of-way maintenance at 89%, and at an acceptable level right below our goal. Overall, we resurfaced 4.46 miles of our 107 village centerline miles of village roadways, and 85% of our residents are satisfied with our maintenance of streets in neighborhoods here in Pinehurst. Okay. The next is to protect the environment, and the KPIs that roll up to that, we have one that's specific to stormwater management. Stormwater management was something that's risen in a priority for the council and for the residents over the last several years. We increased from 77% satisfaction with our stormwater management up to 84% this year. Of course, you all know that we have this as an area of focus this current fiscal year and have applied some resources dedicated to improving that and creating a master plan here in the future. You'll see in the notes there, our staff ensured that 94% of the complaints that came in specific to stormwater management were addressed on time this year. So certainly being very proactive, using MyVOP as a tool to make sure we're tracking those projects and accomplishing those that we are able to do in a timely manner. The others are specific to solid waste, and you'll see residents satisfied with solid waste at 96%, very high. Our promotion of natural resources conservation increased this year, so it went from 86% to 92%. We can probably attribute some of that bouncing back to not having the recycling stream changes this year like we did last year. I think people were a little more used to the changes this fiscal year. And then you'll see refuse diverted from the landfill there. We diverted 20% this year. Our goal has been historically 35% diversion rate, and that is an area that in this current fiscal year, we have determined to drop that to 22%, which we think is a more reasonable goal due to a full year now evaluation of where we're standing with the diversion rate now that the recycling has changed. So that has been adjusted for this upcoming, or for this current fiscal year, I should say. 100% of our solid waste routes were completed on schedule this year, and then 97% of the complaints that were received over MyVOP in the Public Services Department were addressed on time. The next goal is to promote active living and cultural opportunities, and we had 3 KPIs that fell under that goal. Overall, our residents remain very satisfied with our Parks and Recreation programs and facilities, both at 99% satisfaction levels. And then residents satisfied with our cultural arts events at 93%, so also very high satisfaction ratings for all of those areas. Under this goal specifically, we had the Community Center Initiative Action Plan, which of course was completed, and we have our wonderful community center now. And then our recreation participant numbers were around the almost 3,400 participants this year. Of course, that's a little lower than what we expected, but it was due to COVID and the changes that we had within our programs. Our Parks and Rec staff did a great job of improvising during those times and coming up with other ways to keep people active and involved in cultural and recreation opportunities. Okay. And moving on to our internal focus, we have a goal, one goal under the internal perspective, to professionally manage a high-performing organization. And here you'll see an increase in residents satisfied with our communications with them. So we are up to 96% satisfied with Village Communications, which is great. And you also see a pretty significant increase with our residents satisfied with the level of involvement in local decisions at 92%. So our residents certainly feel like they are able to get involved and to be involved in the decision-making process here locally. We have our 98% high resident satisfaction with customer service provided by staff. 93% of our residents are satisfied with the value they receive for their taxes paid. Excellent results there and an increase over last year. And then our percent of depreciable life remaining on assets remains around 40% this year. We have a goal of 50%. Ultimately, it is a range. Acceptable range would be between the 40 and 60% mark is where we've kept that threshold there. We had several initiative action plans that rolled up under professionally manage a high-performing organization here. One was to expand our GIS capabilities, which we accomplished this year and continue to work on incorporating GIS and implementing the GIS strategic plan. We continued working on process improvements in the planning and inspections department. That was based on a Birdie team's recommendation for different improvements we could make there. And then lastly, we continued our journey using the Baldrige Excellence Framework and ultimately completed our application for the National Malcolm Baldrige Quality Award back in April. MyVOP, of course, we continue to talk about MyVOP, but it really is something that we feature throughout our entire organization, and we use it to really track our requests and complaints that come in from our residents. But it remains very popular with our residents. We have 4,900 downloads of MyVOP so far at the end of the fiscal year. So those continue to come in and increase year over year. And our staff addressed over 5,200 requests and complaints that were received through MyVOP. And we responded to those, to 97% of those complaints in the desirable timeframes that we set. Okay. The next is from our workforce perspective, and we have one goal that rolls up under there to attract and retain an engaged workforce. And you'll see here very high satisfaction ratings with our employees and our volunteers who overall like their job and their role at 99% and 100% satisfied. We continue to work through our Learning and Development Initiative Action Plan and made sure to incorporate the system that we developed into our succession planning efforts this year. Vacancies filled with internal candidates is one of our indicators that allows us to see how we're successfully developing our workforce. And in 2020, we had 46% of our vacancies filled with internal candidates. And overall, like I said, our volunteers and employees remain very happy, and you'll see their recognition, their satisfaction with our recognition programs. 93% were satisfied from the employee side, and 95% of our volunteers agree that they're recognized for their performance as well. And moving on to the last perspective, the financial focus, we have one KPI that rolls up under this, which is our total general fund balance as a percent of actual expenditures. And here you'll see that we ended the year at 64%. That is up from 45% the previous year. And primarily those changes are found in, specifically laid out on page 19 in the report. But it's primarily due to the expenditures that fell this fiscal year. And of course, I know Brooke presented you with the financial statements, and the changes for how we ended the fiscal year. But those changes for the expenditures were primarily due to the return of the $1 million for the library, reduced spending due to COVID, some lapsed salaries due to some turnover this year, and then lastly, our capital expenditures that were not purchased by the end of the year that will roll forward. But overall, the village continues to maintain healthy financial condition year after year. And we received our clean audit opinion by our external auditors. We received our 27th GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in our financial reporting, and our 13th consecutive year that we received the GFOA Distinguished Budget Award. To conclude this, I've included several bullet points up here, just summarizing the high performance that the village achieved during the fiscal year. We're a high-performing organization because we've adopted the Baldrige Excellence Framework, and we've embedded a culture of continuous improvement to better serve our residents, businesses, and visitors. I'm proud of our organization and the performance that we achieve year over year. And thank you for supporting our journey and for your leadership as a council, setting the direction for the village. Lastly, we're also recognized for our high performance through awards and other recognitions that we receive throughout the year. And here are just a few that we received in 2020. You'll see we have the ICMA Certificate of Excellence in Performance Management, the GFOA awards I mentioned, our Digital Cities Award that we received in 2019. We actually had the 2019, we received it in fiscal year 2020 though. And then a couple of the Safest City Awards that we received this fiscal year as well. Okay, this concludes my presentation. Does anybody have any questions on our performance for the year?
I've got a couple.
Okay.
It caught my eye again after I looked at it and you were speaking about it. Depreciable life remaining on assets. I think I know what that means, or what the goal is. And I think the goal is to have half of our assets with the, about half, with half of their life left on the depreciation schedule? Is that kind of where we're headed on that?
Yeah, that's kind of the thought process, John. I mean, and it's it's nearly impossible to hold that line when you've got big capital projects like Village Hall and police station and fire stations, and now, we just did make a significant investment in the community center. But as those big capital assets depreciate, it pushes that number lower and lower. But it is a number that we look at because we don't want to get caught in a situation where we're going to have huge capital outlay requirements in a short period of time.
That's the important objective, is to have some way to measure that. And we're kind of working on that. Is that pretty new in the annual report?
It's actually not. We used to roll it up under the financial perspective, but since have rolled it into Goal 7. We've had it on the scorecard probably as long as I've been here at the village. I think it's been on the scorecard. So we keep an eye on.
I think it's really an important one, though. I just really, from a financial point of view and a planning point of view and what we do with fund balance and how we tax and everything else, it kind of gets to how do we maintain our assets, and we don't want to be left behind with a lot to catch up, because that will always happen when everything else is going wrong.
Something to keep our eye on. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. One other question. Going back into the question on lighting, which always intrigues me every year. I think we've found a way to label that, describe that question a little better every year. So we think, can you tell us how that's phrased now and what the number's really saying? It was in the 70 percentile of some sort, but
The adequacy of street lighting.
Yeah, I think it's the adequacy of street lighting in neighborhoods or in general. What are people really saying? How would you interpret that?
Yes.
Good.
I think, I don't know that, did we change this one this year? Was there a wording change while I was out?
Remember when we first asked this question 10 years ago, it came back with some answers that were very curious.
Right.
And I think we learned from that some people were responding because they thought we should have a lot more lighting, and others responded positively because they didn't want any more lighting. And we were trying to find a way to ask that in a different way to make it more clear. I guess we're doing that better.
We asked specifically using the word adequacy.
Yeah, that
Now.
was the change we made, but I
That
don't think
was
it was a couple of years ago we made that
I think so.
change. Your recollection is right, John. Maybe it's tough to tell if you're just asking how satisfied they are with street lighting, for example, in their neighborhood. Different people have different perspectives on what's appropriate. And some people might look at the current situation and say it's too much, and therefore they're dissatisfied.
Yep.
And on the, other people might look at it and say it's not enough, and they're dissatisfied. So, there's a balance you're trying to strike there. And it's the same dynamic we have, for example, with code compliance, satisfaction with code compliance. Some people think we do too much and they're dissatisfied. Some people think we're not doing enough and they're dissatisfied.
And I think that's where it goes for the strategic planning retreat. When we go into the pre-retreat meeting, we have the data that we look at. That data we will have segmented for you. So you'll see it by neighborhood, specific for those questions. Because I know those are some of those, we want to look at those. We want to see specific for street lighting, for walkways, for different questions like that. We want to see it segmented by neighborhood. And we want to see not only that, but how do we fall relative to our benchmark comparisons? It may be acceptable to be at 70% satisfaction based on our benchmarks. And we are very selective with how we benchmark against different organizations. We don't just take the ETC benchmark group that we were talking about earlier. We actually hand select our benchmark comparisons based on population size, demographics, general location in the United States, that sort of thing. So we'll make sure we have those to look at in more detail at that pre-retreat meeting.
Yeah, and that issue you've just mentioned of segmenting by neighborhood, I think that's really important. I think we ought to try to do that with some more of our questions, because I'm realizing that one point in one neighborhood about I want more lighting over here, but I don't want it in a different neighborhood. We need to reflect on that, no pun intended, actually. We need to think about that and kind of tailor some of the things we do and the money we spend a bit more by neighborhood than just across the board. Other questions from the council, though, please.
I
Good.
needed
Kevin?
I need to understand the depreciable remaining assets. Low number's good in this scenario?
We'd like to keep it we'd like to keep it near 50%.
Right.
No, you have it at green at 40%.
It's between 40 and 60% is kind of we're okay
On
in
the
that
edge,
range.
we're on the edge.
Right.
1 percentage point, and we're in a dangerous territory.
Maybe not.
Maybe
It's
not.
It's a moving average too,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Note that, thanks.
Other questions, Kevin?
No.
Lydia?
For the benefit of the public, I think we talked about this with Baldrige, it's just continuing cycle. Like we get the results of the community survey, we set these goals. You're now reporting on how we did with respect to those goals.
Right.
But we're also taking that information to set new goals for next year. So
Exactly.
somebody in the
Right. Good
public
point.
can look at this and go, "Well, oh, you're slipping here. We know that. And we will take all of this, segment it by, oh my goodness, we segment it so many different ways to set new goals.
That's right.
For moving forward and how we spend money.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And so that is our robust strategic planning process that we have here at the village. So we take into account the survey results that Jason Morato presented to us. Some of these results obviously are from the surveys, but we also track many other key performance indicators that fall into a department balance scorecard that we then use and look at next to all of these results, and we correlate them when appropriate in that strategic planning pre-retreat meeting that's going to happen in the beginning of December for you guys. That's when we look at it in great detail. We segment it. We look at it relative to benchmarks. We give the full data dump, as we call it, so that you all have the information at your fingertips to digest it and to come back at the strategic planning retreat in order to set the direction for the village. At that retreat, that's when you all talk about those priorities and you discuss what are those strategic opportunities that we need to pursue in the next 5 years. And then you help prioritize what those should be based on their importance and their urgency. And ultimately, coming out of that retreat, the council adopts the balanced scorecard for the next fiscal year. So what's on page 21 of that report, the balanced scorecard, is then set in January every year by the village council for the next fiscal year. That's where we say, is 70% acceptable? Or no, it's not. We need to do something better, and we'll provide resources to do something about that. And then that's what we fold right into the development of our strategic operating plan and budget for the next 5-year planning period.
I think my point is we're not patting ourselves, well, yes, we are patting ourselves on the back to some degree, but we're also taking the results of the survey to plan going forward. How do we keep good numbers? How do we get better? Where do we set our priorities? So this isn't just close and pat ourselves on the back and move forward.
Nope, it's only the beginning, right?
Exactly,
It's only
exactly.
The end is the beginning.
That's right.
So thank you. But also, does Baldridge care about this? I mean, did Baldridge did they look at our State of the Village report?
They saw the one from last year. So they didn't see this year's because it wasn't completed at the site visit, but they did obtain a copy of the one from last year.
Would they like to see this?
Too late.
It is too late now.
It's too late.
We're no longer in contact with them.
Thank you.
This is, of course, available on the village website.
It is,
And
yes.
I'm sitting here and think about this, I have some ideas about how we could publicize that or distribute that a little bit.
Okay,
Anyway.
great. And I know Melissa and I have it planned for there will be an article highlighting it in the next newsletter also going out. So we'll make sure to notify people about it there.
Okay, good. Judy, do you have questions?
No, just thank you for doing a nice professional job, and I think as Lydia said, this is part of the process, and a good report for last year on to 2021. Right.
I used a lifeline and texted a friend. We have 28 local governments in our benchmark group.
Thank you. I said 20-something, didn't I? That was a good guess. All right, great.
Okay, any questions on this report?
No, I don't have any questions, but as Judy, I'm very impressed with the report and all the hard work that went into getting everything done that's reported on in the report, everything that's behind it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, Lauren, we thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Lauren.
Moving on then to item number 7, the receipt of a Risk Management Committee annual report and consider employee health benefit plans. Jeff?
Thanks, John. It's that time of year. We do this every year. We ask the council to consider either renewing or making changes to our various insurance programs for the coming year. And Jeff will present this topic. Presentation. Pull it up. Lauren.
Safety first.
All right. Now we're ready. So while she's pulling that up, this is the time of year that we come, in this specific meeting, in fact, each year to get and seek your approval to enter into contracts for a medical benefit program for our employees. While we are doing this, we'll also provide and take this opportunity to provide some additional information about the rest of our insurance programs as well. But typically, this meeting is really, the actionary item is to seek your approval to enter into 2 contracts. One is for the medical health program. The other is for the dental program. Both of those 2 programs, the cost of which exceed the manager's authority to execute without your authority or approval. The rest of the lower tier pieces of information I'm going to go into related to the health benefit program are all small enough that the manager can execute those. So I'll jump into this then. Very first thing I want to do is talk very briefly about our risk management committee. We have a little different structure here in the Village of Pinehurst than most other local governments. I'm not aware of anybody else that handles it the way we do. We have a committee made up, as you can see, of 3 staff members and 2 citizen volunteers from the community that are retirees from the insurance industry. And the 5 of us collectively serve on the committee and work together to develop the insurance programs for both the employees as well as to insure our properties and ensure that we have liability coverages as well. So I definitely want to thank the two citizen members for sure who've given their time, Bruce Hockman. Dick White, unfortunately, has had some mobility, medical issues. He's had a little harder time this year of been able to actively participate in the meetings, but Bruce has continued to be able to make those meetings, and we forward Dick information, and he calls us back. And so we do still get input from him, but it is a little more challenging for him right now to be able to be here in person. But nonetheless, this committee does spend a lot of time working through the insurance programs and trying to put together something that's fair for the employees, be it affordable to the organization. And so I want to jump into those at this point. Oops, let's go back here. Fix that for me, Beth. Yeah, it doesn't want to, there it goes. Yeah, it still, there we go. All right. Okay, so here's the agenda for tonight. We're going to briefly go over the mission statement, the health benefit recommendations, which is the primary purpose of today's meeting, but also want to talk about our business insurance program, workers' compensation, where we are on those, and then there's just a handful of other items that we'll touch on. The first item, the mission statement of the Risk Management Committee, is to serve as consultant, advisor, and review team for all items related to the village's management of risk, as well as the employee health and safety program. So that's kind of why we exist. Went wrong way there, didn't it? Here we go. Okay, so we currently are with Cigna with our health insurance program. We've been with Cigna for about 10 months now. Everything I'm going to talk about related to the health program is on a calendar year basis. So January 1 is our renewal timeframe for all of these coverages that I'm speaking about now. Again, Cigna, this is the first year we've been with Cigna for a number of years. We were with First Carolina Care. Cigna had a little better program related to the network, so we made a switch. They're a much broader network, many more hospitals available to the employees as necessary and needed. And they came in, if I recall correctly, at a 0%. I'm going to look over at Angie. Yes, 0% for last year. So we initially went into this program. It's called level funding with Cigna. Basically, it's like a self-insured program, except your premium is capped. They take the risk on the potential loss based on premiums paid into the program and claims that are paid out in administrative cost. But if there is a excess fund at the end between claims paid and administrative expenses, then we can share in those proceeds and receive some funds back. We do not anticipate receiving any money back this year, of course. But we were looking like we were going to get something as when we did the mid-year review, we were hopeful that we were going to be able to receive a rebate, but the fall claims have come in a little heavier, and so that does not look likely now. You can see there's a 6.07% increase in the cost of Cigna insurance for the renewal for calendar year 2021. Our insurance broker that we work with has actuaries on staff. They projected that Cigna would come in around 12%. They initially came in at 7.4, I believe, 7.04 maybe it was. We were able to work down to the 6.07, so we felt like that's probably very reasonable given where our brokers' actuaries were projecting the premiums to come in at. Vision is another coverage that we do provide here at the Village of Pinehurst, and we are with Principal on that, and that's a 0% flat rate. Renewal dental, same thing, it's Principal and is also a flat rate renewal. We do offer dependent coverage, by the way, through our organization, but the employee pays 100% of the cost of that dependent coverage. So going on to the next slide here, what this shows is kind of where we anticipate landing on December 31st, 2020. We anticipate that our number will be approximately a 3.2% increase over the previous year, and that's what the graph shows you there. Now, we had a 0% rate increase on the premium. However, there are other things that affect the premium that is paid. Turnover, for one thing, is one of those items. As we have turnover, we're not paying premium on that head count. And so our numbers will fluctuate based on that. But we are projecting right now that we will end this calendar year at approximately 1.95 million. This time last year, we projected that to be at 1.105 million. Again, it's the turnover in vacancies that give us that differentiation. The 2021 net estimate there of 1.178 million at a plus 7.6% increase represents 100% employment 100% of the time for next year. Not likely to happen. So this time next year, and that's why I show you the net estimate that we have projected and then try to true it up a little closer, recognizing that we still have 2 more months to go in the calendar year. So next year when we sit here, we'll probably be talking about a percentage that is lower than that 7.6, but that represents basically the highest that we would anticipate. We budget annually around a 10% to be safe, so we are within our budget in terms of the overall program. And again, this net premium, I just want to mention again, that's shown up here is the premium minus the withholdings from the employees for any dependent coverage. So we net that out. Okay, so this is the net number. We have some additional coverages for our employees. We have a basic life and accidental death and dismemberment. The principal, again, is our coverage is with principal, and again, a 0% increase there. Long-term disability is provided to certain tiers of our employees, and again, the rate is set the same, but it's based on payroll. And as a result, we're only looking at about, because of pay increases, only about a $40 net increase. The tier of employees that this applies to, many of which are topped out in their pay and classification. So therefore, the rate or the net amount paid doesn't really increase in correlation to what you would expect in terms of potential merit increases and things of that nature. The flexible spending account is with a company called Flores and Associates. Flexible spending account is where employees can withhold child care and qualifying medical expenses pre-tax. They have to declare that up front, but it is a benefit to lower your taxable income, and we pay an administrative charge of that for that service of $5 per employee per month. It amounts to about $1,800 in total for the year for us to administer that program. So again, not a very expensive item. These top 3, life, accidental death and dismemberment, long-term disability, and the flexible spending accounts, sum total a little less than $20,000 in total. So they're not overly expensive items. We do allow an opt-out option for our employees who have either better coverage through a spouse or the VA. They do not have to, they're not required to participate in our program. And of course, if they don't, we don't have to pay the premium on that head. So we have roughly 6, 7, 8 kind of ballpark that will opt out for varying reasons. Cheaper for them to use their spouse coverage or to be using the VA. If they are, in some cases, if they accept the insurance here, our insurance becomes primary, and if it costs them a little bit more in copays and things of that nature here, then they're going to have a little bit more out of pocket, so they'll elect to go on their spouse or through the VA. We offer elective coverages for employees who wish to purchase some other types of coverage, and those typically will be voluntary life term cancer coverage. There's a whole slew of different types of coverages, short-term disability. There's a lot of coverages that they can purchase if they so desire. Those coverages are with US Able and Aflac, Aflac being the larger of the two players at the table. So we make those available as a courtesy, if you will. Doesn't really cost us anything to provide those services other than some amount of administrative cost relative to payroll deductions, things of that nature. You'll see up there that we have a group platform / platform concept up there. What that is, Aflac is typically an individual program, and we were contemplating going on a group platform. The employee would have the choice. If they're already in an Aflac program, they would be able to maintain their existing Aflac program and not have to go onto the group platform. But the group platform provides a little better benefit at a little lower cost. However, some new information has emerged here in the last couple of weeks that are going to make us probably step back and reevaluate that. We're not 100% certain. We're going to jump on that group platform. In any event, it will not affect any of the current employees who are on Aflac. Only any new employees that would be going on the Aflac program, again, at their choosing, they would either be offered the group program or the individual program based on wherever we decide we kind of finally fall on. We thought we were going to move to the group program, but again, we got some additional information that we're not certain that's going to be actually the very best program for the staff. So still under evaluation on that. If there's no questions right now on the health program, I didn't mention that our health benefit program with Cigna is not changing in terms of the coverages or anything of that nature. Co-pays will be the same, pharmacy network, all that stuff remains the same. One of the things that drives this timing for us to be kind of tight, we don't get our final numbers from the insurance providers until the last minute because they're trying to hold out and see, they want as much claim data as possible. But then we have open enrollment on November 11th or 12th and 13th coming up. And in between then, we have to produce the benefit guide that has all of the different coverage information in it that our employees can take away with themselves to have. This doesn't cost us anything, by the way. This is produced by our broker, but is a very handy guide for our program. And so we have to get this updated and everything ready to go. This year's renewal or open enrollment is going to probably look a little different with COVID, I should say. We're not exactly sure how we're going to do it yet, if it's going to be some virtual kind of program or whether it's going to be small group, in-person program. I don't know yet. We still got to sort that out, but it is around the corner, about 2 weeks away. Again, I'll go ahead and jump to the property liability unless there are questions on the health benefit program.
Probably one question can apply to both as we go forward, Jeff. Who is the broker again that we use on this?
We use a company called One Digital. They are based in Raleigh.
Okay.
I think Cary or Raleigh.
Mainline insurance broker.
Yeah, they represent us in the marketplace and have the ability to put it out to bid to any number of companies.
Do they do both health and commercial and
They only do our health program. I'm going to move into our business insurance right now, and I'll talk to you a little bit about who we're with there.
So the question then is, have they provided you, the broker, with the credit ratings and best company ratings of the 3 insurers, 4 or 5 of them actually, that we use? These are all well-known names. I'm not.
Yeah, you're talking about for like Cigna, for
Correct.
example.
Correct.
They have not, but we also have not requested that. But we do know that these are main players in the marketplace. Principal, I don't think they would bring us anything that was.
I would assume not, which is a good
Yeah.
reason to use a broker.
Yeah. But that's a good question.
I'm surprised that, given COVID and then all that's happened and then all the uncertainty, that rates aren't going up more than they are. So that's a good thing, and I think the broker must be searching the market pretty well. And I think we have a track record with most of these companies now for several years. I think that's right. Cigna.
Principal, we do. Cigna, we do not. Cigna is a new carrier this year for us. And, we take a philosophy of building relationships as opposed to jumping and allowing people to buy our business, because ultimately that comes back to bite you, because they realize, the players in the market realize that we don't even want to deal with them because they're going to, they'll jump ship from you as soon as you have a bad year or something of that nature. So we try to build relationships. We don't like to move too frequently. We do, however, recognize that we have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers and organization. It's also very difficult and time-consuming switching on our HR department and our payroll and all of that, making that whole transition. So we like, if the rates had come in at 12%, we probably would have gone back out to the marketplace. But given that they came in around 6%, medical trend is running 4 to 10%, and that range, normally they hone that range in pretty close, but because of COVID and the uncertainty of how that's going to impact the larger, and how long it's going to go on for, the larger cost of medical coverage and inflation. Right now, the 4 to 10% is the range, and we're hitting it, at 6. So we think that's probably pretty reasonable.
Good. Any other questions on the medical from council?
I
Judy?
just had the same reaction to them only getting, a 6% increase. That's just amazing in this marketplace.
Yeah. Okay,
Beth, go ahead.
All right, I'm going to switch gears here, and we'll talk a little bit about business insurance. I won't go into as much detail here. However, just to report out to you what we're doing, this is running on a fiscal year basis, okay? So this is a July 1 start, so we're already into this year with our coverage this year. We carry all of our property and liability insurance with the North Carolina League of Municipalities. Technically, it's the Interlocal Risk Financing Fund of North Carolina is what their entity is called. That manages the property and liability insurance, but it is through the League of Municipalities. Everything except the harness track. Harness track, being an equine facility, requires specialized coverage. The League of Municipalities will not accept or cover that type of a facility because they do not want to expose the rest of the pool to a one entity that has a one unusual type of business model, and that's, in our case, the harness track. We're the only ones with one of those in the state. So you see line 2 there. We work with a company called Markel, and we have a local broker that we work through to help us get through and navigate the Markel insurance program. But all of our general liability and property for the track itself is with Markel and has been for a number of years. They hold their rates pretty steady. There is no increase this year on their rates. Now, when I say that, there is a slight increase typically in price because replacement cost of barns goes up a little bit every year, just based on construction inflation. So you'll see a slight increase in the premium paid, but not the rate, if that makes sense, if you understand that situation. We are also required under North Carolina General Statutes to bond our finance director. The North Carolina League of Municipalities does provide a bond at $250,000. We actually have ours bonded at $490,000. We have to also carry, by general statute, $10,000 minimum on the tax collector, even though we don't collect taxes here in the Village of Pinehurst, collected by the county, but it's a requirement. So there's a net total of $500,000 on our finance director plus the $250,000 that's already built in. That's going to be up for discussion next year. We're not sure if we're going to need to continue at that level. We may lower the private side that we're purchasing to supplement the public, the side that we're already getting from the North Carolina League of Municipalities. This graph here shows you what it cost us for all of those coverages, the 3 that I mentioned. That's all of our property, liability for the organization, plus the harness track, plus the bond on the finance director. So you can see we're up about 3% this year to $126,000, almost $127,000. We insure about $37 million worth of property, and that does include the new community center in that number that you see there. Again, all of the liability for the organization, general liability, public officials liability, employment practice liability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, are all included in this number. So we, again, looking at about a 3% increase on our premium year over year, which again is really not too bad considering we added the community center at around 3.4 million construction price of just the facility itself, the walls and interior. Continuing along with some of the kind of the business insurance, workers' compensation, we are, again, through the North Carolina League of Municipalities. Technically, the entity within the League of Municipalities that operates the workers' comp is the North Carolina Interlocal Risk Management Agency. They keep all of their pools of funds completely separate from one another. Premiums have to support each of the individual funds, and so that's why they're set up in the way they are. This does include our harness track staff. They will insure for workers' compensation our harness track staff because the type of maintenance work that they typically are doing is very similar to what public services would be doing, buildings and grounds, et cetera. So they do not require us to carve out the staff. We did this past year bid this out just to check, do a market check. We got a competitive bid. Was not as low as the league's program. Comparable services, league probably has a little few more services that the private agency did not have. So we've elected to remain with the league, but we do want to test the market every so often on these just to make sure that everything is in line where it should be. The wonderful thing about the North Carolina municipalities is obviously they have to cover their expenses, but they don't have to make a profit. They have to cover expenses, and that is one of the advantages, I think, to helping them not only keep the rates low, but to provide a lot of extra service within the premium that's paid by the pool. So here you can see what we're paying in workers' compensation claim for fiscal year 2021. This will get trued up in the fall of next year. That number will be slightly different. It doesn't change a lot, but it does change a little bit because it's all based on payroll. And so at the end of the fiscal year, there'll be an audit. They've projected what our payroll will be, but then they will true it up against our actual payroll at the end of the fiscal year. And so what you see there is fiscal year actual is in that number where it says plus 10%. That was the real fiscal year 20 after it had been trued up. Fiscal year 21 is trued up, but including fiscal year 20. Okay, so this is the actual number that we have paid net, $125,428. That's a 5.3% reduction over the previous year. So next year, when we come back around, we will true up 21, but we'll include that in FY22 number. So when you see it up there, that's the way it'll be reflected. Okay. A couple of other things that fall under the umbrella of the Risk Management Committee here, the Wellness Committee and the Safety Committee, operate somewhat independently under Angie Cantor, who was on our committee and is the liaison back to our committee. But these committees are chaired by staff members. The Wellness is chaired by Kelly Brown out of the Planning Office, and then the Safety is chaired by Carlton Cole, Fire Chief. They do meet on a regular basis. The makeup of the committees is essentially a member from each of the departments within the organization. Generally speaking, sometimes we'll have a little trouble filling maybe a police or fire slot because of the nature of the shift work that they do. But you can see some of the types of activities they carry on throughout the year, and so they're a large part of the management of the risk for having a safe workplace, but also for having safe and healthy employees. So these two committees are dedicated to those two ends. Be glad to entertain any questions that you might have regarding our insurance programs as they sit currently.
I have none. Other council members on the rest of the report? Judy? Jane? Kevin? Lydia?
One action item that we would request
Yes.
is the authorization to enter into the contracts for Cigna and Principal for Dental and Health. Those contracts are not typically generated until you've taken action, and we've agreed that we are in fact going to renew with them.
We do have a motion for that. We weren't going to let that go.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So does Angie.
Under item number 7, we do have a motion to approve the Risk Committee annual report and the benefit plans. Is there a motion to that support?
I move to approve the medical and dental insurance contracts for calendar year 2021 and authorize the mayor or his designee to execute the contracts.
There is a motion by Judy Davis. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Jane Hogeman. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Jeff?
Moving on, we'll go to item number 8, which is a discussion and consideration of the small area plan contract and the budget amendment relative thereto, I believe. Jeff?
Yep. Thanks, John. This is a continuation of previous discussions. I think we're getting close to hopefully achieving council consensus on moving forward with this contract. And Darren will present the topic, and we'll see where we are.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, I hope we're getting close to a consensus. Jane, I know you're almost there. So where are we right now? And why are we here? First of all, we're here to talk about the small area plans and where we're going with the 2 small area plans. We're here because of some recommendations in the comprehensive plan that was just adopted. The comprehensive plan looked at a couple special areas of this community. And 2 of those, the focus area 2 and focus area 4, are 2 of the areas within the comp plan that are kind of special areas in the community. And these, it's Pinehurst South, which is down Highway 5, which is focus area 2, and then focus area 4, which is Village Place, Rattlesnake, or Village Place area, Rattlesnake Trail. And those are 2 areas that the comprehensive plan said, why don't you have a recommendation and do a small area plan for these areas? And really, why they came up with some of those recommendations is that our current, with some of the aspirations and some of the goals that are in this comprehensive plan, our PDO doesn't do a real good job of implementing some of those goals and aspirations. In fact, in some cases, it's a threat to implementing, our current PDO is a threat to implementing some of the goals and aspirations of this document. So as part of that, we're proposing to move forward with the small area planning process that will take the comprehensive plan. We're not throwing this out. We're not starting over. We're going to take this with this planning process and really focus down and become more specific, come up with specific building design standards, specific public space standards, land uses. All those items will be discussed as part of this planning process, which is ultimately leading up to, and what changed as far as the scope of this project and what changed the cost of this project and the reason for the budget amendment are those 2 form-based codes. Those 2 form-based codes, at the end of the day, which is everything's leading to, will be depending on how we end up adopting them, will become the regulating ordinance for these 2 areas. So that's where your building design standards will come into it. That's where what the street's going to look like, what the building's going to look like, what the uses are in those areas. Those 2 form-based codes are what this is all leading up to. So it will help implement some of the goals and ideas of this comprehensive plan, and it'll try and sync up, and it will sync up because it'll become the regulating plan. So we will start implementing this plan with those 2 form-based codes. So we've had some discussions over the last few months on this. The contract that is before you represents that last kind of blast of concerns and some of the changes. We were trying to find consensus. So this reflects, and I've given you that matrix, our latest recommendation with respect to the contract for the 2 small area plans. There's been a number of changes that have been made to it. Some that haven't, some where we've tried to clarify, some where we've tried to explain, and we'll continue to do that tonight. Tonight, we're just simply looking for consensus on moving forward. At the end of the day, you know, the process lays out a 21 task process, which ultimately, with I think five trips to the community with the consultant, 3 workshops, and that level of workshop, again, it goes from very kind of more general out here to a very specific. At the end, an open house on the plans itself. The base contract cost that we have at this point, this is a team up. The contract itself is a team up between Design Collective, who's kind of the principal. They're the ones who will do the lion's share of the work. They're the planners, they're the landscape architects, the urban designers, the planners, things like that. They're also teaming up with Remy Kemp, which is the transportation advisor. Part of this project is looking at mobility and the traffic situation and the streets and how do we connect to other areas of the community. So they'll be looking at that and some of the traffic impacts. And then we have Dougal Real Estate Advisors who are looking at it from a market analysis standpoint. When we start to look at land uses that are going to be contemplated within this plan, it has to be, you have to start by looking at what the market, you know, what kind of market do we have, what can the market bear. It doesn't mean we have to go that direction, but we have to look at it from a reasonable set of eyes, what is practical in that area. We've never done a market, even when we did the new core master plan, that was never based on a full-blown market analysis. So this would be a full-blown market analysis for these areas. And that will help guide the land use process at the end. At the end of the day, the contract itself, it goes out over 7 to 8 months. We're hoping to get it done by next June, July sometime. And the contract cost is approximately $190,000. That includes the lion's share of that goes to Design Collective, who ultimately has ended up doing the form-based codes, and then lesser cost to Dougal Real Estate Advisors for the market analysis and Remy Kemp. We've also included it as the optional services, and which we're requesting for in the budget amendment. Doesn't mean we have to go forward with it. We're just putting it in there as an option at this point. Would be the comprehensive assessment of the PDO. And Janie, you've asked this question, what's the difference between this and what's in I think it was Task 5? And Task 5 is really, as we start to move forward with the goals and recommendations and the form-based code, it's how does that work? What do you have to make any specific adjustments to this to implement that? The PDO assessment that is contemplated as part of this is an overall PDO assessment. It's looking at this entire document and evaluating and doing an analysis of it. I think it'd be similar to one that was done by the Lawrence Group in 2011. It's really doing a deep dive into this document. And then the other is the other $10,200 is to create 2 separate small area plans, whereas the base contract itself contemplates just one document where both plans are included in one document. At this point tonight, we're looking for consensus to move forward with the contract.
Darren, thanks for all that. I had a little trouble moving from the matrix that you did, which was very helpful in getting that and researching that into the contract. I couldn't, it wasn't, at least the contract I saw wasn't marked. But nevertheless, both documents you've worked very hard on this, trying to get it all right and answer the questions. So I'm working with the matrix a little bit, or I was earlier, and I still have some questions. I think some of the council members may too, about some pieces of this that appear to be duplicative. I know you don't agree with that, and you've tried to explain that. I'm trying to get my arms wrapped around that too. So thank you for your time and your explanation on that. But I'll open it up here for questions from the other council members at this time, if they have them, unless there's something else you want to add.
No, just one thing on the matrix. Yes, I understand it, that it wasn't a red line in here or anything like that, but we did try to explain where the change were. I tried to highlight it.
You did. There's no. you did a good job at that. Thank you. For sure. Yeah. Anyway, questions from council here that we have. Kevin?
I read the Design Collective fee response, which is what we're talking about here. And it seemed to me that it's well explained, and I think we're getting a deal because we're Pinehurst, in my opinion. I think they want to work for the village of Pinehurst, and the value of getting a head start on form-based codes. And to me, the total difference in those two areas means we must pay that small extra fee to have these designs have two different footprints, because one's in the historic district and one isn't. So that's obvious, we need that. And the form-based codes would be different in some respect. And that, so I feel like, it's public money, but I believe it looks like a bargain if we're going to get to where you say we're going to get to. We're going to get to a head start on form-based codes, something we've been dreaming about. I mean, keeping us up at night. So it looks like a bargain to me. And I know it's after you read everything that it looks like a bargain. Initially it doesn't, but I felt the explanations were helped me a lot. And I think this is $100,000 more if we didn't have a client that wanted to work for us. So that's just my opinion.
And I think Design Collective is excited to work for us, and you can see the fee for the form-based code for Pinehurst South was the smaller of the two, and you saw how they did explain that we are getting essentially a deal on the form-based code for that. But the form-based code, this is going to ultimately end up in being a form-based code. These are going to be if we move forward with the contract, will be two form-based codes for this community. There will be full form-based codes for these two communities, and we can springboard this. We can springboard this to Highway 211. There are potentially the hospital district. We can use some of the concepts, not the proprietary drawings, but the concepts, the design standards. You can use those in other areas of the community. And Design Collective stated so in some of the concerns.
Just to clarify to the audience, my perception of form-based codes is trying to appeal to the measurements our public has on development. They want character-based development. And the only way to get there, in my opinion, is form-based code. So really it's about us doing what the public wants us to do. So we're using code words, form-based code. I'm going to call it character-based development.
And just because I'm a planner, it's part of my jargon. But form-based codes are two things. It melds into play the building design standards. So you're talking building architecture and all that. And then what gets sometimes forgotten is the public design standards. There's public space standards. What does the street look like in front of it? What are some of the street amenities? Look at the street amenities that you have down in the village center. It's looking at things like that and then codifying it.
When you say street amenities just now, what do you really mean by that?
Street amenities can be
Street amenities in the village center.
It could be width of the sidewalk. It could be the type of poles that they have, the benches, green spaces, public green spaces, things like that. It's every part of the public realm.
Landscaping.
Streetscaping, landscaping, all that.
Greening,
Questions? Judy, did you?
I wanted to be sure I understood what you're saying. There's an additional fee for the PDO work. And are you saying that we don't have to commit to that now? That's something that could be done later?
It's an option that we can add on. Those are two optional services. What we're doing is requesting to budget for it right now. So if we decide later in the process we actually want to move forward with that, we have it. This is the cost that they'll because it's in this contract that they'll do it for.
And then Kevin's advocating for two separate reports.
I just thought it was a blind glimpse of the obvious. I don't see why we have to wait on that. But that's our collective.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify what you were asking about.
I'd like to get that done in the beginning. I don't know why you wait on that.
going to be at the, and really, that's at the end of the process, because ultimately, at the end, there'll be 2 reports done. Because at the beginning, everything is going to be part of probably one large draft. I don't know how the planning process is going to look. It's really at the end.
Okay.
Those 2 end documents, having 2 separate end documents, that's what that option is leading to.
Jane? What, or Judy, sorry.
Or comment?
Yeah, please.
I mean, I would also advocate that, the PDO fee seems like quite a bargain. That's really something that we should spend money on. The other thing is, this issue about the meetings and the steps and things like that. This stuff is going to start they'll do some planning stuff in November, December, but January to March, who knows what our community will be like and who will come to an open meeting. So we could end up, that whole cadence of meetings and things like that could change radically from what this is
would
written
happen?
to be.
That's a good point. That's one of the things on my mind. What would happen if we have a contract to provide all these meetings and workshops, and we can't have them, or we have to have them all virtual, or,
Well, we asked everybody that when they were here for their interviews, and most of them, people said, and these guys did too, that they would have to revert to virtual, Zoom
No, I
meetings
mean,
or breakouts.
yeah, I know they'd have to be virtual, if at all, but what about the pricing?
Well, that would,
What we're paying for something, in other words, my concern is not only the number of workshops, which I think are too many from where I think this project could start, but if we contract for 3 or 2, and the intention is that they be in person, right? If they move back to virtual or don't get held at all, where are we in the contract pricing?
well, the cost generally to those is the cost for flights, it's the cost for meals, it's the cost, it's that, those are the costs that we'd be saving on. The project is still, they still have to provide us the meeting, they still have to provide us with a workshop, it's just that the travel reimbursable becomes less.
I would add that this specific, I could be wrong, I might have to, but pulling from my notes, said they get better outcomes from the digital and virtual than they do from the in-person. There's something going on where there's an ease of participation. And I mean, we got some unusual data when we had those people here. They were saying how they got a better outcome. And I thought we ran great meetings online ourselves. I thought we got good outcomes out of our online meetings. I don't downplay that we will get bad outcomes from virtual or digital. It's not the same as, being in person, but I think it's possible we could get better outcomes. I think we're turning a corner. The public is well trained. The public wasn't well trained, when we did the comp plan, So I don't know. I think it's possible. I don't want us to prejudge that we'd get a bad outcome if it became digital. It's possible we get a better one.
Well, I think that a good outcome can happen from a virtual. Probably better in a situation like this to have it in person because of a variety of reasons of how one communicates and what one can see and all that sort of thing. It's just
Well, is
it
there,
just seems to me we're starting, we've talked about this, we're starting to create the comp plan again, and we ought to be like a third of the way there already with what we did in the comp plan in previous activities to get to this point. I like the small area plan idea. I want to pursue it. It just seems that continues in my mind to be an overdoing of the concept relative to what we want to accomplish with these 2 areas and what we already know from comp plan. Judy, I'm sorry.
I want to support the process that's laid out here because I don't think we know everything. And I think that, and this agency doesn't know everything either. So I think everybody, there's a level of learning and spin up that they've had. Yes, they're going to talk to us and walk away with some ideas that we have, and they'll have, opportunity to meet with the citizens and test it. I think I'm going to just jump to the COVID situation. Do we have a force majeure clause in our contract? I don't remember it.
That's a very good point, yeah.
Because I think we ought to add the word pandemic in there.
Yeah.
Not just an act of God, but a pandemic.
That's a really good point. And in
And I
other types of business contracts, those are very common.
And working through with my clients on some issues where, they're procuring services from people, everybody's aware that this changes everything. And so I know that whatever the situation is that we encounter, that they'll be accommodating, because everybody just has to be. That's the way of the world right now. But it won't hurt us to have something to rely on there.
I don't see the duplication because there's no detail in these areas when somebody comes to town and wants to do something in these areas. There's a 40,000-foot idea, and this is supposed to bring it to the ground. So I know it looks like duplication. I think it's fair to be concerned about duplication of efforts, but I see it as not duplication at all because of the micro level this is going to be, and that was up there in the macro level. So I don't see it. And I also see them using our previous plans because it's a requirement hammered into them, have to use our previous plans. So in that sense, so I understand it though. I understand the concern, but I think it's time to get some detail.
Sorry, you said it's time to get, I couldn't hear your words.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just time to get some detail. There's not enough detail in the comp plan.
Yeah.
Whereas the small
Yeah.
area plan will give us the detail
Right.
to help the planning staff. It doesn't have the detail. I mean, Judy and I found ourselves in a meeting, and we kind of had a fly by the seat of our pants using the comp plan, and we didn't have the detail we needed. We could have used detail. I don't know what I'm talking about. Could have used detail. We did pretty good, but we were trying to take something at a macro level and bringing it down at the ground level. And I'd rather have had it down at the ground level already. That's all I meant.
Okay?
Well, I'm also, what?
It's on.
Oh, yes. Want to see the small area plan thing done. But I am concerned that this process is too complex. And I'm concerned about it for a couple of reasons. And one is, I think we're going to get public burnout, super planapalooza fatigue-itis on the part of the public. And I think we're going to get some interest in part of it, but not enough interest to come back repeatedly. And that means you're going to be left with just special interests, and that I think is going to skew the results. So I am concerned. I think we do better to have one big old workshop with the 3 options for each focus area and have people react to those rather than coming into the first workshop and spinning around and putting Lego blocks on maps and then deciding not to bother to come back to the one where the 3 options are that's more important. And the other reason I'm concerned is I'm concerned about the marketing analysis angle here. And I'm concerned because I see them saying that they're going to base their analysis on the 2017 land use fiscal analysis. And I don't think that's good. I mean, that analysis was a good, I'm sure, accurate snapshot of where we were in 2016 or 2017. But I don't believe it's where we want to go. It's going forward, because that analysis says the best thing we can do is have a whole bunch of multifamily units, high density, and they're going to be 68% vacant, but that means that they're going to pay a lot of taxes and we won't have to give services. So it's good for us financially. Well, but that's not what we want to do in the small area plans at all. For one thing, we want to have, I think, lower traffic generating uses on Route 5, and we want to have vibrant neighborhoods and Village Place, and if it's 68% vacant, it's going to be vibrant. So I'm concerned about that marketing analysis, and I think based on the studies that have been done up to now, including the comprehensive plan, the senior management and the council has a pretty good idea, generally, of where we want to go with these two small areas. And what we're looking for the consultant to do is to come up with 3 options for each one that we can then consider in detail. And so that's where I'm coming from. I think it's too much of a muchness, you know? Some is good, more is worse. Sometimes I think the process is too much. And I don't like having them base the marketing analysis on the 2017 land use fiscal analysis. I think that's a bad idea.
All right, just a quick response. As far as the burnout is concerned, during the comp plan, I think we tried to burn you out of coming to those meetings, Jane, but you came to every single one of those meetings. So I think, and there's a lot.
I know.
I personally don't think we're going to burn out the public in general on this. I think because of the specialness of what we're trying to create here, I think that, and this community just by and large is engaged. I think this is an engaged populace. Look at the people that show up for the meetings. I personally don't think we're going to burn out. Again, you didn't burn yourself out. Look at where you are now. So
I want more.
Whetting your appetite.
But I was the only one. Notice.
Well,
Others that were regulars.
secondly, on the land use analysis, 2017 land use analysis, I think the contract says we'll utilize that. We won't base it. They said we'll utilize that land use analysis, and we'll work with you to figure out how you want to use that land use analysis. So I think the market analysis people want to work with us because right now that is our frame of reference. It's our best information that we have right now. So if we have something better, if we need to tweak something within an analysis, I think that part says, yeah, we can work with you we will work with you to determine the best way to utilize this information.
Yeah, I think they're going to look at it, but I think it's apples and oranges in relation to what a market analysis is. A market analysis looks at what is feasible in the market in terms of the economic forces that are at play. And I think that our fiscal analysis is going to be interesting to them, but it's not relevant to a market analysis.
It's simply a data point.
That's right. And you know, the fiscal analysis doesn't say we should do anything. It's just a objective look at, on average, how different types of development do or don't pay for themselves in the village. And to your point, Jane, it's only one thing to consider. Yeah, we do have to consider things like traffic and other impacts and, impacts on our character. All those, in other words, the dollars and cents of it doesn't make quality of life. And we all recognize that, but it is a data point.
One other thing about the stakeholder meetings, and we're really talking about 3 workshops, which I don't think is an excessive amount of workshops from a public over the course of the planning period. And I did specifically reach out to Design Collective and ask them their thoughts on that. And this came in at 3:57, so I didn't have a chance to push it off. But when I asked Cecily, she said, I don't think we can or would be comfortable showing up with concepts and draft recommendations for evaluation without having first introduced ourselves in workshop 1 and informing stakeholders of the project purpose, goals, building off the 2019 comprehensive plan, but focusing on the 2 small area plan areas and schedule, explaining the difference between the broad focus of the previous planning effort compared to the specific focus of this effort and why it was recommended in the long-range comprehensive plan and why it is important for the village moving forward. And importantly, heard input directly related from stakeholders on what they would like and would not like to see in these areas. So I think that's an important concept, is we want to hear some of that so they know when they start going to that planning effort, that Jane, those three efforts, or those three plans, that they've heard that. Workshop number 2 is for sharing concepts and recommendations. And
No, I get all that. You don't have to read me all that stuff. I'm also,
I want to comment on people. I don't know about your neighborhood, but mine's changed. There are new families that are there that weren't there 2 years ago when we did this. And I think that, we've got new talent to tap, that would be interested in this. So I think that I'm not concerned about fatigue at all. And hopefully we'll find somebody who runs through that process and then runs for election to council as a result of their participation. Being a good role model, Jane.
what do you mean?
I said, I hope we find somebody that through this process wants to be more engaged with our community and run for council. You've been a good role model, Jane.
Okay, thank you.
Darren, just to clarify one thing, you were reading from a letter
From an email.
from Design Collective, the
Correct.
potential consultant, correct? That's what you were just reading now?
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
And I'll come back with another question after Jane completes her thought. Go ahead.
Well, I think that's all I'll say right now. I do have strong reservations that it's too much of a muchness.
Question is, remind me, us, because of this concern about the workshops, right?
Mhm.
What's going to be the makeup? How are we going to get the people involved there? What's going to be pre-selected, nominated, open to the public? Let's go through that, how the workshops will be peopled.
Well, I think that there's a process for that laid out in here, and I think they talk about, we're gonna talk to you about identifying stakeholders. I think that's one of the tasks
Yes.
that they discuss. And we're not part of that process yet, so, yeah, I mean,
Two or something.
they talk about, yeah, it's task 2, stakeholder, yeah. I mean, that's really meeting with the client and identifying the stakeholder groups and how,
I know
mean,
that.
they have an idea, they have a process for how to hold these meetings. It's really working with us to identify those stakeholders and the public and how to get them there. And that's really, they'll work with us so we can figure out how can we better engage the public. Do we go to the school system and go directly to the parents, because I think that's been effective in other aspects. Do we, what are the avenues that we can identify some of these stakeholders, and they'll have some of that idea, because again, they've done this, they're a well-groomed firm that have done this for a number of years, so they'll be able to identify some tools and tricks, and that's just working directly with us, and that's working with us, and that's, again, they've put it in the contract to identify us and the council at various aspects along the way, along the process. So.
Just, to me, it's a little freeform, and some of that may be good, and some of it maybe not, but I'm just concerned as to, on this issue of fatigue, which I basically agree with up to a certain point, I think it's going to be more difficult to get the number of people involved in 3 workshops rather than 1 or 2. That's just my view. Okay. Lydia, I think you haven't had a chance to address the audience
Yeah,
here.
I've been taking notes. It really, as to burnout, I'm really not worried about it. I think people are so eager to do something besides deal with COVID. And we found it with the community survey. It's like, yay, we get to do something besides deal with COVID. So I don't have that concern. But I tell you, one thing that really helped me was go back through the RFQ, go back through their presentation, go back through their contracts. And it made me more comfortable with who this firm is. This is not a fly-by-night firm. They're solid, they have good recommendations. We like their work product. Natalie, I remember you really liked their deliverables and their timetable for what they would do. So, this stuff meant a lot to me when we first went through it, but looking at it again through that perspective. And then Darren, it also seems like they've been real good about working with you when you've gone back to them with these concerns and they've incorporated them. So I have a good, I hate to say good feeling, but I'm comfortable with these people. And we liked them when we met them, but I feel better about them now after going through this again and seeing how they work through the process now. But also, maybe Jane, this is a little bit to your point. Natalie, when I met with you and Darren months ago, and you listed the expertise that's needed to do a small area plan, can you guys run through, is that, or just,
I mean, the expertise is somebody who's had a lot of background and experience and the capacity to be able to work on these things. You gotta, can I do a small area plan? I've done small area plans, not to this level. I've done it to some of the levels that, Jane has talked about. We can look at what land uses should be in the area, but getting down to that prescriptive form-based coding, I've not done that. And then you got to look at the makeup of my office. I have 2 planners under me that, again, don't have the capacity to do this, nor do they have the experience in working in the small area plans. Now, you go to somebody like Design Collective, they have a staff of 84 to draw upon, and that's a number of planners, ASCP level planners, with a significant level of experience. You have landscape architects. Landscape architect is really important for that the public design standards and some of the urban design itself. You have urban designers and then you have planners, and then you have to look at our tasks. They have to actually bring in a transportation planning, an expert in transportation planning, Remy Kemp. We don't have that experience, and then the market analysis piece. So you see, it's a true team up. This is this is a smaller, and we would call this more of a boutique firm. It's one of those smaller, specialized land use planning firms. It's not like a big Mead and Hunt or an ACOM, which are very good firms. There's nothing wrong with those firms that can do it all. But this is kind of a more specialized. They have a more specialized skill set at doing these things. And you saw some of their work examples as part of the presentation and what we provided to you.
yeah, and also, through the Senate hearings, the past few weeks, you heard about the doctrine of severability. And I know I hear some concern about, let's pull out some of the tasks, but, with the doctrine of severability, I don't know what game they talked about, but you could pull out one piece and the structure would remain intact. But you pull out too many pieces and the structure collapses. And because after going through this again and being comfortable with this firm, and Jeff, I think this goes to something you said last time. These are professionals. This is what they do, and this is what they do well. And so I don't feel, I'm not qualified to tell them what to do or what not to do. And they seemed, when we met with them, we said, what do you do about, the COVID situation? What do you do virtually? They answered that question. So through this process, they've demonstrated to me that they were the right choice. And we all started this with, boy, we need to do this for both of these areas and do it now, because we've seen more and more for the past few weeks and months the need to come into these places. And Shane, this goes to your point, we've got to protect the character of this place, because if we don't actively, progressively protect the character of this place, it could be gone and it's too late. So let me see if I cover. Oh, and another thing that came out in all the interviews is, I know you got the comp plan, but one of the firms pointed out that with the public input, you might find out that something that was in the comp plan maybe doesn't make sense. And it was something down in, Highway 5, and I've forgotten what it was, but they said you may decide with more public input as you get into a more detailed level that really doesn't make sense. So, I liked hearing that they would be flexible, and we're going to do, again, what the public wants. We're going to listen to what the public wants. It's what they want, not what we want. I think that's all my notes. Thanks.
Thank you, Lydia.
I just want one thing. All those tasks, all the previous tasks ahead of task 17, which is phase 3, all those tasks are leading up to those deliverables of those final small area plans and that form-based codes. And really that's getting that stakeholder involvement and doing some of that background research to get you there. And that's kind of a shift in the planning paradigm. The old planning paradigm was you'd develop a plan and you'd give it to the public without a lot of public input, and you'd see what they'd say. And what would happen is you wouldn't get the buy-in for that plan, or you'd been wasting a lot of time because you got no public support for it. So all those previous tasks, which you might think is duplicative, is not. It's trying to get that public support leading down to those final deliverables. And the other thing is, this is an experienced company in getting to those final deliverables. This is not their first rodeo. This is not the first time they've done this. So, from that standpoint, and if you looked at we've all seen all the other RFPs, all the other contracts, they're all pretty similar. I mean, the tasks and how they laid it out in the public processes, they were all generally pretty similar. So we're not diving too much off the ledge from one of the others. And I think why we focused kind of on that design collective was kind of that final work product that they've provided. And I can tell you that they've been very, very responsive. Anytime there's been a clarification, and several came in today, and they responded to 5 or 6 emails today, which I'll compile that and get that out. But they've been very, very responsive to us. So from that aspect, from a consultant aspect, they have been very, very
We
responsive.
threw them some curveballs. We wanted to add some things. Yeah.
Yeah, from that
I would say that the National Shred Institute says you don't get a good outcome until you get 3 feedback loops. That means what do you want? I'm sorry, I'm being John Cashin, aren't I?
Want to use mine?
Until you have a triple feedback loop. You ask them what they want, you analyze the data, ask them what they want. Again, after you analyze data, and ask them what they want again. That's usually, according to the National Shred Institute, that's when you get the best outcome. So what sounds like duplication is really a process, I guess is what I wanted to add.
I have no doubt that Design Collective is a wonderful firm, and I'm sure they're going to produce a good product for us. I just think we're not directing them quite as much as I think we should where we are in our process of looking at these 2 areas. We certainly need the assistance. Can't do it internally, no question about that. We need a firm to help us. This is a good firm. They'll produce something, I hope, that'll work. But I'm skeptical about the overall approach, and I'm not trying to second guess them. I'm just trying to reflect on and bank on my own experience in dealing with consultants to the Village of Pinehurst and other places over time, and trying to make this the most successful experience we could possibly have. And I'm not sure, in my view, we're quite there yet. I suspect others feel the opposite, and that's maybe the way we'll go. Anyway, are there other questions from Jane, please?
I just like one more thing here. Lydia, I do agree that we need to protect Pinehurst and do it fast. But I think the fastest thing that we could do is not all these form-based codes that take until next December, or whenever the heck it is. I think the fastest thing is to look at zoning uses and to amend our PDO and get that done right away. And then we can go back and go around with designs for the curbings and the fountains and the squares and all that kind of thing. But I think that's really sort of the nub of where my concern is that we're looking at detail and getting immersed in it and taking a lot of time with it instead of cutting to the chase of what are we doing with the uses in these areas and doing that right away and getting that put in place.
So I think that's a good discussion for our retreat. Is there, let's forge ahead with the details with Design Collective. Is there something else that we can do on a parallel basis that would make sense? And I'd say that's definitely an item we could wrestle with during the retreat.
Yeah, like, for example, bringing the rest of our zoning in a compliance with the comp plan, outside of these small area plans.
Absolutely right, yeah. In the retreat, yeah. Any other comments from council?
Also, I mean, we spend a lot of time on our IAPs, and we have an IAP, Small Area Plan for Village Place and Rattlesnake Trail Corridor. That's something that's been on the front burner, that we put on the front burner, correct?
As we've all commented, the Pinehurst Golf House Pinehurst puts our pedal to the metal on all those things. So
that's a perfect lead-in for me to make a motion. I move to approve the contract with Design Collective Incorporated for the small area plans and authorize the mayor or his designee to execute the contract. And I move to approve ordinance 20-14, amending the general fund budget for the small area plans.
There's a motion by Kevin Drum. Is there a second?
Second?
There's a second by Judy Davis. Motion's on the floor. All in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Opposed?
I'm not happy.
Vote is 3-2, so the motion passes. I will do everything that I can to make this a very successful engagement, but in order to keep the feet to the fire a little bit, I voted the way I did. So I'll work to make it right, the process, but I do think we have some lots of good discussions with this fine consultant to make this the right thing to do. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you.
That is the end of the major part of the regular meeting. We do have any other business that wants to be brought before the meeting? Lydia?
I do. Our conference call with the Park Service, did you want to mention that under other business, or?
I didn't, other than it was an organizational discussion about things they need to do in their study. That's
That we thought was
pretty
very
much a summary
positive.
of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's all we really know at the moment. And things have been pushed off a little bit till January, February to have a further discussion and hear from them, at their request, that is.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. Did you add to that, or Jeff, maybe, if you have anything?
No,
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that we learned that to the extent that we're going to be involved in this effort by them to assess the viability,
Yeah.
if you will, of our landmark district, we're just going to be assisting them with public engagement. I think that's going to be our role.
And I would add, we thought that we thought the tone of the conversation was positive and productive.
For
It's a good,
for more context, can you amplify on that a little bit? Because it's like inside baseball conversation
Yeah.
here.
you like for me to, the Park Service has engaged a company, a consulting group in Raleigh to monitor, it's a condition monitoring study to come in and monitor the condition of our landmark. And we had a conference call last week with 3 people from the Park Service and the lady who heads up the consulting group, and then she's got somebody who's going to do the public outreach. And we talked for about an hour and just felt like have a nice working relationship with them. I get the sense that we'll be able to collaborate with them. Natalie's going to work with them on coming up with a communication plan. So yeah, it was it's nice to have positive conversations with the Park Service, which we did.
And I gather what they intend to do is to come in and do a detailed study and document all the things that have changed in our district since it was accepted or formed. And then some commentary regarding each one of those changes about, was it positive, is it negative, or is it neutral? And just lay it all on the table.
Right.
And this is a study that federal regulations allow them to do.
And they have done similar studies with other landmark districts in recent years. And they're
Savannah.
intending to do it across the board. It's a policy, I think, now of the Park Service to go to all of its landmarks, small and large, and relook at everything. That's where we are.
Great, thank you.
Any other business? If there are none, move to comments from attendees. Does the clerk have any comments via email from attendees? And if so, I can read it, or you can, Beth?
Pardon me if this is kind of, I haven't read this yet, it just came in, so.
We'll need your microphone a little bit more. Would you like me to read it, or are you just
no,
looking at
I
your
can
screen?
read-
Okay.
read it, it's just- I haven't read As a village resident of Pinehurst, this is from Bill Hager.
Would you repeat the name, please?
Bill Hager,
Hagger?
Hager.
Thank you.
As a village resident of Pinehurst, I humbly request that the Village of Pinehurst Council look into the current safety issues of pedestrians involving the crosswalk at Beulah Hill and Ritter Roads. This crosswalk supports the Village of Pinehurst Greenway, which many village residents and tourists use regularly. Currently, this crosswalk is without a doubt a most dangerous one in Pinehurst. It's on Beulah Hill Road, which is one of the busiest roads in Pinehurst. Currently, drivers do not stop or slow down for pedestrians, and if a pedestrian has a brief opportunity to cross the street, drivers routinely honk their horns out of frustration. People often have to run in order to avoid the cars that do not slow down for the people in the crosswalk. I believe adding a flashing signal light, I believe adding a flashing signal light that can be manually actioned by the pedestrian attempting to access the crosswalk, along with routine compliance and monitoring of North Carolina Statute 20-173, pedestrian crosswalk right-of-way by the Village of Pinehurst Police, would easily address this safety issue. I thank you for taking the time to allow me to address this urgent safety concern.
Thank you. That's the only comment tonight by email? Thank you, Beth. Are there comments from attendees in the room?
On that note,
Yes.
this actually reminds me, I can report, not a report I want to render, but we did have a pedestrian vehicle accident today in the Village of Pinehurst. And it was at the same intersection that we've historically had the most problems with. It's, which is Rattlesnake Gun Club 211.
Yep.
I think if I recall from the pedestrian safety data call we did several months ago, I think we've had maybe 5 or 6 pedestrian or bicycle related accidents at that intersection in the last 20 years. We had another one today.
So Highway 211 Rattlesnake Gun Club.
Yeah.
That issue came up at the NAC meeting. It came up 2 meetings ago, and of course here with some others. And I think you've researched that a little bit, but that project from the DOT is not moving up the charts, if I have that correct, Jeff, up the priority.
I don't have a clear
Okay.
read from DOT on when they might get to that.
Okay, all right.
Still working on it.
I have to say too, and I don't know about other council members, I bet in the last 3 or 4 months, say since July, there have been 2 or 3 other citizens who live in Village Acres principally, talking about that intersection just on the street where I see them or at the fitness center
Yeah.
or wherever we are. So that is a remaining concern. As we know, it's high on the list of action, to need action. There are comments from attendees in the room, though. Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn the regular meeting and move into our work session, please?
I move to adjourn the regular meeting.
I second that.
Motion by Judy Davis, second by Kevin Drone to adjourn the regular meeting and move to the work session. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll move into our work session. Would the council like a short break? Because we have quite an agenda for the work session. It's 10 minutes to 7, 6:50. 5 minutes, 10 minutes? 5 minutes. See you at 6, give you 6 minutes, 6:55, 6:56. Thank you.